All right, guys, it is mock draft Monday. So you know what that means. Let's do another Green Bay Packers mock draft. So far, we've done a 3-round mock draft, a 5-round mock draft, but today we're going to do our first 7-round mock draft for the Green Bay Packers. I'll call it episode 1.0. This is how I usually do things. I'll do a 3-round, a 5-round just to get things started. Then I'll dive down into the official mock drafts, the 7-round mock drafts. This will be version 1.0. We'll do it here every single Monday, mock draft Monday on this channel. So if that does interest you, go down and click subscribe. We're finally starting to get into the full swing of the draft this offseason. I've been diving down into a ton of prospects, watching some film, finding my gems in this draft. So I'm excited to do our first 7-round mock draft together. All right, guys, so let's dive down into my first Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft of the 2025 offseason. Man, it just feels so good to say. You guys know I love draft content on this channel. I'm sure a lot of the viewers simply come to this channel just for the draft content, and that's completely fine. We love the draft on this channel. I pride myself into taking a deeper dive into the draft. Last year, we got a decent amount of picks correct, guessed that the Packers would select in that 2024 draft. So we're going to try to do the same this year, but this is just a start. So bringing up the screen, Packers obviously still pick at 23. Now, what's annoying about this draft is it's one of my favorite drafts in terms of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but the Packers only have 7 picks, whereas years past, we had 11, 10 picks, right? I wish this was the draft, that we had 10 or 11 picks, because there's, in my opinion, so much talent. There's not a crazy amount of first round talent, like, okay, these are first round graded guys, but after that, like round 2, 3, and 4, man, there's so much talent. So I kind of wish the Packers had like last year's draft class in this one with all those picks, especially 2 in the second. But we're doing a 7-round mock draft. Here's the advanced settings. Packers pick at 23. Let's get into it. All right, so let's get to our pick. We're doing no trades. We'll implement trades as we get further into the draft process. Just seems kind of counterintuitive to do trades right now, this early in the draft process. Ashton Genty's on the board. Not going to draft Ashton Genty. It's either he goes early or he falls right around this area. The Packers don't need to draft Ashton Genty as much as fun as that would be. So some other players available here at 23. Walter Nolan. Last mock draft, we went Kenneth Grant. You know, an option is definitely Walter Nolan. I say this, I think one of these guys could be available at 23 or a potential slight trade up. The Packers go get their guy at defensive line, where I think they do have, you know, their eyes on right now is adding defensive lineman talent in this draft, multiple guys. Shamar Stewart is available. I know a lot of people aren't too fond of him due to the lack of production, but you see the potential here. You know, 6'6", 290 is pretty crazy, but again, the lack of production is a little bit worrisome, but the guy, he has talent. We also see Gray Zabel at tackle, Nick Scouton, the other edge at Texas A&M. A lot of people like him over Shamar Stewart. You have Jade Barron, you have Trey Amos, Siobhan Ravel, Donovan Izariku. There's a ton of guys available here, but I think you can't pass up the talent here in Walter Nolan. And I know we went Kenneth Grant last mock draft, but I wanted to take a look at Walter Nolan in this one since he's on the board and Kenneth Grant is off the board. 6'3", 305, 21 years old, coming out of Ole Miss. Fits right in as a 3-tech on this Packers defensive line. I think he fits well with this scheme and is a true day one starter in this draft class for Walter Nolan. 88.9 PFF grade this last season, 6 sacks this last season, 7 the season before that. He had 25 quarterback hurries this past season. Run defense grade 91.6. So although not the same type of player as TJ Slayton, if the Packers do lose TJ Slayton, obviously we'll need to replicate that, get more of like a zero-tech type of defensive lineman down there to help against the run. But Walter Nolan also really, really good against the run. 11.9 run stop rate percent. Pass rush win rate at 10.9%. I feel like this draft is heading the direction where the Packers are going to add a lot of talent on this defensive line, as we consistently say, hey, they need to have 4 guys down there that can consistently get home if the Packers are going to not blitz as much as maybe other teams may, which I'm fine with so long you have talent down low, like adding someone like Walter Nolan into that room. Now, again, there's other options here on the defensive line, but when you take a look at Shamar Stewart, Nick Scouton, even Tyleik Williams, I think Walter Nolan is like a level above these guys in terms of what you think or where they're at in the draft class. Some people have Shamar Stewart higher. I just think it's a more of a ready now type of prospect in Walter Nolan than Shamar Stewart. And I feel like us Packers fans were kind of over getting, not necessarily projects in the first round, but guys that need to develop, right? Where Walter Nolan could be a day one starter for this defensive line, which we may need it. Kenny Clark are down 2024. Devontae Wyatt, we'll see what he does in 2025. But we also have, Carl Brooks. Colby Wooden hasn't been much of an impact. TJ Slayton's an impending free agent. And Walter Nolan has a ton of versatility, has great leverage down low. Like I said, could be a day one starter and turn into one of the better defensive linemen in a couple of years. So at pick 23, we are going Walter Nolan, defensive lineman from Ole Miss. So we're back on the clock at 55, and a player that's available, which, to be honest, I don't see being anywhere near available at 55, is Jalen Walker. A guy that, can play off-ball linebacker, but excellent at rushing the passer as well. That versatile type of player in a 4-3 scheme that kind of similar to what we have in Edgerrin Cooper. So imagine just having like two of these guys, right? Where you can move them around, third down, rush the passer. I think he had 3 sacks against Texas. You can see his highest graded game here in 2024, 79 overall grade against Texas. I believe he had 3 sacks against that Texas offensive line, which is impressive in its own. Some other options, we have a bunch of running backs: Cam Scatabo, Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson. Some edges: Kyle Kernard, Derek Harmon's another guy that I see going at the top of the first, early second. So again, we're going with the PFF board here on the simulator. I know that's why a lot of people are like, oh, don't use PFF, don't use PFF. But every other mock draft simulator has their own boards as well, which is just as, inconsistent. So, we're trying to draft based off consensus, based off where we feel where the player, may go or may fall. And again, we're so early in the draft process, things change so much. So to say, this player definitely isn't going to be there, this player is going to 100% fall, is inconsistent as well, because the draft process changes so much over time. So Derek Harmon is another guy that, I have linked to the Packers a ton. Obviously, we went Walter Nolan, but I wouldn't be mad at all if they went Nolan and Harmon and they got away with both of those guys at 23 and 55. Even a guy like Jordan Birch, who I talked about in last mock, 6'6", 295, or I believe my last draft needs position video. In a game last year, reached 21 miles per hour, which is just insane. We also have Chris Paul Jr., but man, just the thought of adding Jalen Walker to this defense. You already got Walter Nolan, who's a defensive lineman down low. Jalen Walker, can very well be an edge rusher on your team, but offers you that versatility. A guy you can kind of have as an off-ball linebacker as well. Kind of raw in coverage, can definitely be better. But this guy is just a freak of nature, an extreme athlete, and a guy that can be an absolute playmaker on your defense day one. He had 36 tackles this past season. And I actually want to go into his premium stats so we can see his pass rushing stats as well. Yeah, so Walker had 34 pressures, 7 sacks, 5 hits, 22 hurries, 36 tackles, 15 assists, and 7 missed tackles, or a missed tackle percentage of 12.1%. Some draft boards have Jalen Walker like top 15 talent. Some have him all the way down here in the 50s. I think it's just if a team knows how to implement Jalen Walker into their defense, which it shouldn't be hard because this guy has game-changing potential, why not add another guy like this? If you're talking about having Jalen Walker, who has insane potential, and Edgerrin Cooper in the same linebacker group, added with Quay Walker, I mean, that you're talking about probably the best linebacking core, most versatile linebacking core in the entire NFL, and I'm all for it. The Packers are losing Isaiah McDuffie. I don't think they'll bring him back, and if you're swapping Isaiah McDuffie with someone like Jalen Walker, who can play edge, get after the quarterback, but also drop back and cover tight ends and just fly around the field, and you have Edgerrin Cooper next to him, I mean, that's an absolutely scary thought. Again, will Jalen Walker be available at 55? Probably not. He probably won't, but he could slide in the draft due to some teams not really having a true position for him. We don't know. I've seen crazier things in the draft, but in terms of this mock draft, it is 1.0. We're so far away from the draft. He's available here on this simulator. I'm going Jalen Walker at linebacker out of Georgia at 55. I can't pass up the talent. That's going to be our second round pick. Here at pick 87, I feel like we have to address cornerback. There's some reports today by Rob Demovsky that pretty much it seems very likely that Jair Alexander will be leaving the Green Bay Packers, or all signs point towards him not playing another snap for the Packers. So in that case, I would have liked to address cornerback earlier in this mock for sure. If the Packers do get rid of Jair for maybe draft picks, they likely will address cornerback earlier. And if Jalen Walker wasn't available at 55, I probably would have went with like someone like Isaiah Thomas there at 55. But there are still some good options here at 87. Don't get me wrong. There's good cornerback options in the second and the third as well. Again, a lot of this is changing. Consensus has Mello Dots and Kobe Bryant, both corners from Kansas, a little bit lower, where consensus has people like Zy Alexander, Denzel Burke, and Noel Williams a bit higher. So I want to take a look at a couple of these guys. We drafted, I believe, Noel Williams in our last mock draft, and he still feels very Packers-esque and might be one of these players that I continue to tie to the Green Bay Packers, like I did Edgerrin Cooper last year, that ends up becoming a Green Bay Packer. Not only because he's a ball hawk and he was an absolute beast at corner last season, 6'1", 200 pounds, and a ball hawk, 7 interceptions, but he offers day one special teams contribution. He's a punt returner for Cal, and he allowed a pass rating of 40.1 this past season. Man coverage grade, 67.7. Better in zone, which is fine. The Packers play more zone. Completion percentage allowed, 47.7. Run defense, 78.7. Only missed 3 tackles there, and he's been only an outside corner over his career. So he fits with the Green Bay Packers. There's also Zy Alexander, replace one Alexander with another. I said that in the prior one. 6'2", 194 pounds, an outside corner, had 2 interceptions, allowed a 53.2 passer rating last year, had some great games against some good teams, right? Ole Miss. We also have Florida down there, Texas A&M. Alexander was a transfer from southeastern Louisiana, transferred to LSU in 2023. We see his first season not too hot, played in 8 games, 418 defensive snaps, but still not terrible. Like a lower grade, allowed 3 touchdowns, but also had 2 interceptions and allowed a quarterback rating under 100. He's great against run. He's great against the run. He's only had 1 missed tackle. Alexander's a very intriguing prospect. Does have some injury history, which I know it seems kind of ironic. We're looking at an Alexander to draft to replace an Alexander who also has some injury history. But the option definitely is here. And I think if we're at 87 and all these cornerbacks are available and the Packers were going to go cornerback, it's going to be one of Zy Alexander or Noel Williams. And you know what? I think I'm going to go Zy Alexander in this mock draft, just because, maybe more of a taller framed corner that the Packers would like. Outside guy. I know both him and Noel are outside, but 6'2", 194, a little bit on the lighter side, but still above that Packers threshold, and showed a seamless transition from FBS to FCS football and hung with the best. And as you see, the great grades versus top tier talent, which shows a lot of potential at the NFL level, and had his best season playing against the top talent. Outside cornerback, Zy Alexander, just, you bring him into the building, probably don't give him number 23. I think that would be crazy to do. But, you place one with another, can be an instant contributor on special teams and become a potential starting outside cornerback. I think the Packers would also go and sign a free agent like DJ Reed, and he would start opposite Keyshawn Nixon or Carrington Valentine. So you don't need to get a corner super, super early if the Packers did that. I think Zy Alexander has a ton of potential. I really, really like Noel Williams. I just went with him in the last mock draft. So I'm going to go Zy Alexander, cornerback out of LSU, here at pick 87. Here we are in round 4 of this 7-round mock draft at pick 123. The Packers seem to always get home run picks in the 4th round. We're going to go after a wide receiver, and there are a couple great options. I talked about Pat Bryant in my draft needs video, but someone who I have higher than Pat Bryant, who is very intriguing and really fits the Packers thresholds in terms of what they like in a receiver, is Torrey Horton, wide receiver from Colorado State. Traditional X receiver, 6'3", 185 pounds, a little bit on the lighter side. I think he could rise up draft boards once the combine happens and you see a 6'3" wide receiver run, say, like a 4.4 40. He's good against man coverage, has to clean up his route running a little bit. I might do a video on a bunch of receivers in this draft class. Again, it's my favorite thing to break down, but Torrey Horton's a very intriguing one. Not only does he offer you, some potential at receiver, also punt return for Colorado State, kind of similar to where we were talking about Noel Williams, but we didn't go Noel Williams, so why not get a guy here that can contribute at wide receiver while Christian Watson's gone, a guy that can stretch the field, win one-on-one matchups, fast, 6'3", kind of replicating maybe what we got from Christian Watson. And more importantly, the Packers love to draft receivers that maybe didn't have a great the previous season, but the one prior to that. And we see 2023, he had an injury in 2024, only played in 5 games, 331 yards and a touchdown. But back in 2023, he had 96 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. And in 2022, he had 71 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Only had 1 drop in 2024, but again, he only played in 5 games. Very intriguing prospect, Torrey Horton is, and I'd be all about the Packers selecting him there in the 4th round if he's available at 123. We need a receiver that can beat man coverage consistently, and I think Torrey Horton can. A guy that can plug right into that X spot without Christian Watson being available for the foreseeable future. So we're going Torrey Horton, wide receiver out of Colorado State here at pick 123. We're back on the clock at 159 in the 5th round, and I think we're going to address interior offensive line in a center that is Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State. We don't know what the Packers are going to do with Josh Myers. I think they're going to bring him back. It just seems very Packers-ish to bring Josh Myers back when a lot of people are like, we need to move on from him. He didn't have a great, 3-year career here in Green Bay and never really reached that 2nd round potential. So why not add a little competition from someone from the same alma mater that is another Ohio State center in Seth McLaughlin, 6'4", 305 pounds. This past season, pretty nice grade, 70.7. Not a great 2023 in terms of grade, but this last season didn't allow a single sack, didn't allow a single hit, and only allowed 7 quarterback hurries. Played a ton of snaps at center for Ohio State, these past 3 seasons. Had some injuries this year, only played in 10 games. But run block grade, 67.9. Pass block grade, 74.1. He has very similar football IQ as someone like Josh Myers that can really assess, blitzes coming. So very similar to Josh Myers in terms of that. And this center class is pretty weak, honestly. A lot of these guys take your pick out of these top 4 of who you really have as like the number 1 guy. Really, these guys are all across the board. It just depends what you think of each player. But I'm going to go Seth McLaughlin because it does seem like a plug and play option if the Packers do get rid of Josh Myers, a guy that has a ton of IQ, football IQ, could start day 1, and it doesn't really feel like a rookie you're putting into the center position, which you need a guy with great IQ at center for the Green Bay Packers. So we're going Seth McLaughlin here at pick 159 in the 5th round, center from Ohio State. Here at pick 198, I think I'm going to take a look at tight ends in round 6. We know what we have in Tucker Kraft. I mean, he's tight end 1, top 7 tight end in the NFL this past season. Should be a top 5 guy if we give him the targets. But we do have a big unknown at tight end 2, tight end number 3. I don't think the Packers are going to give up on Luke Musgrave this early. I don't think they should, but you should still add competition into the room. And why not add a guy that has similar, play style as Luke Musgrave and Oronde Gadsden the second out of Syracuse here. This past season, 934 yards. In 2023, had an injury. He does have some injury history, but the 2 seasons he was healthy, 900 plus yards for that Syracuse offense. 1.93 yards per route run, receiving grade 83.0, extremely low drop rate at 3.9%. Not the greatest blocker, but more of a size to speed mismatch. You'd put as a big slot, a guy out wide that, you get a linebacker matched up against him. Watch out. And that's kind of what we thought was going to happen with Luke Musgrave, and it simply hasn't. I'm not saying it can't, but why not add another guy into this room? I like Ben Sims, right? We also have Tyler Davis, who I think a lot of us forgot about returning from injury, but who knows what they feel with him. You've John Fitzpatrick, but I think we could add a little bit more talent to that tight end room to maybe run more 12 personnel, and whether that's with Gadsden or Musgrave with Tucker Kraft, right, having the option there, 2 guys that can definitely stretch the field as a tight end and create mismatches is a good problem to have. 6'5", 236, 21 years old, and if he can stay healthy, this guy has a ton of potential. And I think he's a great flyer pick here in the 6th round. I could see him going earlier than this, but if he's available in the 6th round at 198, I'm all for the Packers going Oronde Gadsden the second, tight end out of Syracuse. So that's where I'm going at pick 198. At pick 238, we're going to get an edge defender. Now, we already got Jalen Walker, who's kind of like a versatile piece, off-ball linebacker, can rush the passer, that sort of thing. So we kind of already did get an edge, but let's add another. I always say you can never add enough edge rushers. Last year, we got Evan Williams. So why not get Johnny Walker, right? Like it flows. It flows very well. It flows perfectly. We got Evan Williams. We'll get Johnny Walker into this building. 6'3", 255. This past season, 10 sacks. The season before that, 8 sacks. A ton of production from Mizzou. 75.6 run defense grade. About average run stop rate at 5.6%. Great pass rush win rate at 15.4%. 6'3", 255. Fits right into that mold that Packers like at edge rusher. Just adding this guy into the rotation of edges that we have with now Jalen Walker, Johnny Walker, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox Jr., just add a bunch of talent down low, and get home with your front four. So we are going Johnny Walker Jr., edge from Missouri here at 238. Here at pick 250, let's add another defensive lineman. This defensive lineman class is so loaded, so getting a guy in the 7th round, you might get a draft steal. And I haven't done much research at 7th round defensive lineman, I'm going to be completely honest. But if there's a guy on the board at 250 named Thor Griffith, run the card up. I don't care. Run the card up. 90.5 2022, 89.2 2023, 84.3 2024. I guess a little bit of regression there, but over the years, 14 total sacks the past 3 seasons, extremely high pass rush win rate, but also really good against the run. Could fill in at that TJ Slayton role, 6'2", 320 pounds. And again, Thor Griffith, get him on my team. 100% get him on my team. Add another defensive lineman. Load up the trenches in this draft. That's going to be this mock draft, right? Load up the trenches. We're going Thor Griffith with the final pick at 250, defensive lineman out of Louisville. All right, guys, so that was the first 2025 Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft here on this channel. Let's go over it. Walter Nolan at pick 23. And like I just said, this mock draft loading up the trenches. Walter Nolan at pick 23. Honestly, him, Kenneth Grant, or even someone like Derek Harmon at pick 23, I'd be happy with. And getting a defensive lineman that has day 1 starter capability at the 3 tech for the Packers would be perfect. And I just think adding more talent to this defensive lineman room at defensive line, at edge, is a must right now. And if you can rush the passer really well, you don't need wonderful cornerbacks, right? Walter Nolan at pick 23, I'm all about. Jalen Walker, again, it's so early in the mock draft process. A lot's going to change. I know a lot of you probably well, why is Jalen Walker even available here at 55? I get it, but things can happen. He was available in this mock draft, and it's a mock draft, right? I'm going Jalen Walker at 55, a ton of versatility, can be a game wrecker on a defense if used correctly. And adding him with Edgerrin Cooper is absolutely terrifying. So I had to go Jalen Walker. Zy Alexander in round 3, replace one Alexander with another. Seems likely the Packers will move on from Jair. So let's add Zy into the building, a tall, rangy cornerback that transitioned from FCS to FBS at LSU and hung with the competition. And he's right around that mark for me in terms of cornerback availability, right around that 90 mark. I think Zy Alexander fits well there. In the 4th round, we go Torrey Horton. I think he's a 6'3" wide receiver, 190 pounds, tall, rangy, field stretching type of receiver. 1v1 matchups, can beat man coverage. I think he has a lot of talent, and getting him in the 4th round would be awesome. Seth McLaughlin, we get in the 5th round to potentially replace Josh Myers. Maybe not this year, but the future years. Has tons of IQ, just like Josh Myers, but potentially could be a better center than him. Maybe has a little bit more potential. In the 6th round, we go Rondé Gadsden, the 2nd, tight end from Syracuse. Another mismatch type of guy, similar to Luke Musgrave. I have high hopes with Musgrave, but can he stay healthy? And also, what are the Packers? How are they going to utilize him this year? Maybe they'll try to add another guy like Gadsden just to have multiple guys like that in that room to create more mismatches, which I'm all about. Like I said, it's a good problem to have. Then we go Johnny Walker Jr. at edge at 238. Again, we went Evan Williams last year. Why not go Johnny Walker this year? It just makes sense. A guy with a ton of pass rush production the past 3 seasons. Why not take a flyer there in the 7th round? Then we finally go Thor Griffith. I mean, like I said, this defensive lineman class is loaded. If you're sitting there in the 7th round and you want to add yet another defensive lineman, there's a guy sitting there named Thor Griffith. Again, add him to the team. And he actually has a ton of production. I think he's 6'3", 320 pounds, good against the run, can get after the quarterback. Adding, a ton of defensive lineman talent in this class. And Walter Nolan, Jalen Walker, Johnny Walker, and Thor Griffith. Just absolutely load up the trenches and be able to get after the quarterback, just sending for something the Packers wanted to do in 2024, but didn't do a great job at it and was their downfall. So that's the mock draft. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, this is version 1.0. There are plenty of mock drafts to happen, so a lot's going to change. So if you're looking at something on this mock going, no way that happens, hey, don't worry, we got a while together. There's going to be plenty of different mock drafts and also a lot of different things changing. I do appreciate you guys coming by to the video. If you could, leave a like down below. It supports the channel a ton. Also a reminder to go check out BetUS and use code YouTube150 at sign up. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.